Good morning, learners. Today I want us to look at the various life compounds that result from carbon. Remember we said last time they could exist as polymers or monomers. However, today I want us to look at some of what we are calling as polymers or the macromolecules that are important for us as living things. And these, they are part of what we call as food, which help us to survive as living things. There are 4 classes of nutrients. They provide us with energy, raw materials for the body to grow, repair its worn out parts, and function properly. And they are part of what we are calling as organic compounds since they are made up of carbon, which is combined with other elements. The macromolecules include carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acid. These usually exist as polymers, that is, they are long chains of various carbon bonds with other elements including hydrogen and oxygen. Carbohydrates exist as sugars, starches, or cellulose, and we will see these and their various importances. Lipids exist as fats, oils, steroids, and wax. Proteins, on the other hand, they form what we call as muscle, hair, hormones, and enzymes. Nucleic acid are the ones that form what we call as the genetic material. It could be DNA or RNA, depending on the organism we are talking about and the function of the various nucleic acid. Let us look at carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are what we simply refer to as energy-giving organic compounds, and they mainly consist of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen that are bonded in various ways. We have what we call as simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. The simplest form of carbohydrates are what we refer to as glucose, and glucose usually is made up of 6 carbon elements, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. And this is the simplest form of a carbohydrate that exists as a monomer, as a single part of a small molecule. Many of these are what we form as carbohydrates. And you see the ratio of carbon, hydrogen to oxygen is 1:2:1. And most of these, they are they are mainly used as energy sources by us humans, or what we refer to as carbohydrates. They exist in their monomer form, what we call as a monosaccharide, and examples are glucose, fructose, and galactose. You will notice that for glucose, fructose, and galactose, they are what we referred to in our previous class as isomers. They have the same number of carbon atoms, they have the same number of hydrogen atoms, they have the same number of oxygen atoms as glucose, that is in a ratio of 1:2:1. They have got 6 hydrogen atoms, they have got 6 carbon atoms, 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms. However, the arrangement of the various atoms in the compound is different. From the monomer, we have what we call as disaccharides. Disaccharides usually are dimers. They are formed of 2 sugars. For example, a glucose and a glucose will combine to form what we call as sucrose. That is, they are formed of 2 monomers. They could be 2 glucose molecules. They could be 2 fructose molecules. They could be 2 galactose molecules, or a combination of any of those to form examples of disaccharide, which include lactose, maltose, and sucrose. Then these disaccharides and these monosaccharides combine to form complex chains of what we are calling as carbohydrates that are polysaccharides or polymers. And they include examples such as glycogen, starch, cellulose, and chitin. These examples have got various functions. For example, glycogen is used as a carbohydrate, is a carbohydrate that stores energy in the animal liver. Then we have got starch, which is what is stored in plants. We have got cellulose, that is usually found as roughage and is what is found on cell walls and cotton. We also have chitin, which is the form of carbohydrate that is found in arthropods, in their exoskeleton of arthropods. Then we have got another type of polymer of carbon, that is what we are calling as proteins. Proteins usually are polymers that are formed of smaller molecules, what we call as amino acids. And as we know, amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. And usually, the amino acid is a hydrocarbon that has a carboxyl group and an amino group in some cases. When we look at the case of amino group, remember what we said, it is a carbon with a double bond of oxygen and a hydroxyl group. And they can also have an amino group in some cases that is made of nitrogen and 3 hydrogen atoms. The body usually of living things use proteins to repair the parts of that are the parts that are worn out, and also to regulate some of the cell activities, including enzymatic activities. Examples of amino acids are such as alanine and serine. And you see, when you look at these groups, they have got an amino group, what we are calling as nitrogen combined with hydrogen atoms, and a carboxyl group of what we are referring to as carbon and a double bond of oxygen and a hydroxyl group. Proteins, usually whose monomers are amino acids, are essential structures in many activities. For example, many of the structures we have in our body system, such as collagen and elastin, they are made up of proteins. Enzymes, which we have as regulating various activities in the body, are also made up of proteins. So our muscles, what we use for contractile functions, they are also made up of proteins. The transport channels we use in the body, which is usually in the form of hemoglobin and protein channels, they are also made up of proteins. Hormones that regulate the various activities of our body, such as the case of blood sugar regulation using insulin, it is also a component of proteins and amino acids. Amino acids, we have got a unique, each one of them has got a unique structure. However, what you need to remember at this stage is that for an amino acid, it must have an amino group and a carboxyl group. Then what we are calling as the R chain that distinguishes based on how many carbons it has and how many hydrogens it has. That is what distinguishes the various amino acids we have. Then we have got another category of macromolecules, which we refer to as lipids. Lipids are energy-rich compounds, and usually they are made of hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen. They include fat, oils, cholesterol, and waxes. I don't want to delve into the various characteristics of lipids, of the various examples of lipids such as cholesterol and fatty acids, but for your knowledge is that you need to know that cholesterol is an waxy lipid that is found in animal cell, while fatty acids are organic compounds that usually have a monomer of fat or oil. Then we have another category of monomers, what we are calling as nucleic acid. And this nucleic acid is made up of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and in some cases, phosphorus. There are two types of nucleic acid, what we refer to as DNA and RNA. And you will realize that DNA and RNA are what controls the genetic material of living things. and they are made up of these elements. This is very important because for each human being, the genetic material is what defines who you are. Other compounds that are made up of carbon that are organic include vitamins, minerals, and water. In our next class, we will focus more on water and the various characteristics of water that also make it unique in applied chemistry. And when we talk of applied chemistry with relevance in carbon, we have seen that the various macromolecules, that is the carbohydrates, the lipids, the proteins, and the various nucleic acids, they are very important in various applications of life. They make part of human beings. And as we are seeing in the case of carbon, the various vitamins, minerals also form an important part of what we eat and what we are. Some aspects of our body systems, the enzymes we have, the hormones, the various enzymes we have, the hormones, the various structures of our body, our muscles, they are made up of organic compounds, compounds that contain carbon with other bonds. Therefore, carbon is a very important aspect